So ulcerative colitis, it's one of those names that sounds pretty complex, maybe even a little intimidating, right? But what is it really? In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what this condition is and what it actually means for the body. Let's dive in.
Okay, so the first thing to really get your head around is that word chronic. This isn't some 24-hour stomach bug. It's a long-term, lifelong condition. It specifically goes after the very delicate inner lining of your large intestine and rectum, which is called the mucosa. It's like this relentless inflammation that just sets up camp in one very specific part of your digestive system, and, well, it refuses to leave.
All right, so to really get a handle on all this, we're going to walk through 5 key areas. We'll start by looking inside the body to see exactly what's going on. Then we'll cover the outward signs. After that, we'll get into how it's diagnosed, what the goals of treatment are, and finally, what it's actually like to manage this day to day. Think of this as our roadmap. All right, first up, let's dive right in and take a look under the hood. To really get what ulcerative colitis is all about, you've got to picture what's physically happening inside the colon. Okay, so here's how it goes down. The trouble almost always kicks off in the rectum and then kind of creeps its way up the colon. The delicate lining gets all swollen and red. Seriously, picture a really bad sunburn, but on the inside. Then from there, these tiny abscesses can pop up, which eventually break open and become sores or ulcers. And that, right there, is where the condition gets its name, ulcerative colitis. Okay, so with all of that turmoil happening on the inside, what does it actually feel like? Let's talk about the telltale signs, and you'll see how this can range from a minor issue to something really, really severe. And wow, this really shows you just how different the experience can be. It's a huge spectrum. On one end, you've got a mild case, maybe just a couple of trips to the bathroom a day, a little bit of blood. But on the other end of that spectrum, it's a whole different world. We're talking constant, bloody diarrhea, a high fever, losing a significant amount of weight, a heart that's racing, and major dehydration. The difference is just massive. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. 10 to 20. We're not talking about 10 to 20 times a week. We're talking about in a single day. Imagine how physically draining that is, how it completely takes over your life. It really shows you the raw intensity of a severe flare-up. And this is super important. The effects of UC don't just stay in the colon. Because it's a systemic disease, that inflammation can send out these ripple effects all over your body. You might see painful skin issues, eye problems, and it can even raise the risk for things like kidney stones and bone loss. It's a huge reminder that this isn't just a gut problem. It affects the whole body. So with all these different symptoms, some in the gut, some not, you're probably wondering, how on earth do doctors figure out that this is what's going on? Let's walk through the path to getting those answers. And that's the big question, right? When you're going through all of this, all you want is a clear answer. And thankfully, there's a really thorough process to get one. So doctors have this kind of diagnostic toolkit, and they're really methodical about it. They'll start with blood tests looking for clues of inflammation. Then they'll check stool samples to make sure it's not some kind of infection causing all the trouble. But the real game changers are the next steps, where they actually look inside. They use a tiny camera in the colonoscopy to get a direct look at the lining of the colon. And while they're in there, they'll take a tiny piece of tissue, that's the biopsy, to look at under a microscope. That's the smoking gun, the thing that really confirms it. Okay, so once the diagnosis is official, the focus flips completely. It's no longer about what is this, it's about what are we going to do about it. It's time to create a battle plan. And this treatment plan, it's about way more than just medicine. Yeah, of course, the first goals are to give the bowel a break and get that inflammation under control, but it goes so much deeper. It's also about managing nutrition, handling stress, and just making sure you understand the disease. The big takeaway here is that good treatment looks at the whole person, not just the colon. And of course, the plan has to match how severe the disease is. For a mild or moderate case, the focus might be on some specific drugs and making sure your nutrition is on point. But for a severe flare-up, the approach has to be way more aggressive. We're talking about much more intense interventions, things like IV fluids, maybe even blood transfusions, and letting the bowel completely rest by getting nutrition through an IV. And if things still don't improve, surgery can become an option. All right, so once the immediate fire is put out, what happens next? This last part of our journey is all about understanding the new normal, what it actually looks like to live with this day in and day out. A huge piece of managing this is just becoming a great detective of your own body, tracking symptoms, your weight, everything. And diet becomes a cornerstone.
The idea is to get plenty of calories for energy, but with a diet that's low in things that can cause irritation. That usually means steering clear of spicy foods, caffeine, and what's called high residue foods, things like seeds, nuts, and raw veggies that can be tough on the system. And this is where a dietitian becomes your best friend, really helping to customize a plan that works for you.
And finally, the care plan really has to cover both physical comfort and your emotional health. They're totally connected. Simple things like taking care of your skin and using sitz baths can make a world of difference. But just as important is the emotional support, learning how to manage stress, and honestly, connecting with other people who just get it in support groups can be an absolute game changer. And looking down the road, it's also about long-term health, which is why regular cancer screenings are so important.
So you get the diagnosis, you go through the treatments, you figure out a whole new way of life. And you have to ask, where does the path lead from here? With a chronic condition like UC, there isn't really a finish line. The path is the journey. It's about learning to navigate the good times and the tough times, finding balance day after day. So the real question becomes, how does truly understanding the what and the why of all this empower you to walk that path with a sense of control and resilience?